Well, hello there everybody, welcome back to my room. My name is Mikey and it's time for another tutorial. This time we're going to be drawing female anime eyes. I could say sexy female anime eyes, but eyes are just sexy in general, so we're going to take that as read. All you need is a sheet of paper if you want to follow along at home. Get whatever you can. I've got a sketchbook here, but if you're going to use cheap printer paper, which is absolutely fine, make sure that you lay down a handful of sheets onto your surface so you get a better, softer surface to write on. Super cheap mechanical HB disposable pencils. There's nothing clever about these at all. They're really cheap and I use them all the time and they do the job. So don't wait for anything amazing. And life has foibles, so you're probably going to need a rubber if, like me, sometimes you're a cock and you mess up. Now, I was thinking about, right, I've got to do an eyes tutorial to go through all the various things we're going to be learning and teaching about on the channel. But the thing is that anime eye tutorials or eye drawing tutorials in general are probably the most common drawing tutorial I could see on YouTube. They are everywhere. And there's so many people doing such great jobs with so many excellent examples. It occurred to me that there's not much new to learn and share. So what I'm going to do is maybe sort of 3 or 4 particular examples. I'm going to talk about the mechanics of the eyes, the different bits you're drawing and why, because you're going to be able to take that away and any other eye tutorial you see or any other eye you try to draw is going to make a lot more sense. And the most important part as well, to actually make this useful compared to what's already out there, is we're not going to be drawing eyes straight on. You will learn how to do that 100 times over. But what you guys keep telling me is that you struggle with eyes at angles, when eyes are on the side of the head a little bit more, or when one eye's closer but the other eye's foreshortened away, and you can't quite get the eyelashes or the shape of it right. So I thought we might as well just focus there, seeing as that's something you guys keep getting involved with. So let's really just jump in with a super simple example to begin, a real basic setup. So what I'm going to do is just draw some eyes up here. Now the near eye, the eye that's closest to us, is going to be the easier of the two. And the way that I like to generally do this is start off with the top of the eye. That's, for me, the indicator as to where I'm going to place things. So what I'm going to do here is just draw in a gentle curve, quite a deep one, and this is going to be the top of the eye for this particular character. Now you can imagine, if you want, almost vaguely, a sort of circle shape overall. And every eye, every variation of it is a different shape. You've got so many options, but I want to start off with a standard wide-eyed character staring out. Now, if you imagine this is the eye itself, not the whole of the eyeball, but the eye we're going to see, we are going to also have to dictate straight away where the pupil is, the main part of the eye, where all the colour tends to come into play. So I'm going to go ahead and have this kind of slightly surprised look. So I'm going to have a great big pupil so that we can talk about what goes inside of here. Maybe round about here. Super large, if anything. Super duper. And then, now that I know that I've got the top of the eye, I'm going to make this line a little bit darker so that you guys can see it hopefully nice and clear on the camera phone. And then the pupil a little bit darker as well. When drawing really large circles and curves, you kind of have to use a load of smooth lines. Otherwise, I'd need to move the paper around a lot. And then what we're going to do is just start off by showing it's a female eye. And to do that, you have a really heavy lash line. It kind of starts off that simple. Now you don't, if you imagine, by the way, the nose is on the right hand side, you don't have a heavy lash line on the inside edge. You can start as it comes up towards the top. So I'm going to let this curve just come out really tall, and you can make it very thick towards the outside edge where lashes tend to shoot off. So I'm going to follow this arc all the way around as a curve, but it just meets its way back in. This is what I'm doing as a really basic shape. Bring that down and in. And then you can just have it drop back and down the outside edge as it shows that the eye is coming back round and in. And then separate it a bit. You can show where the bottom of the eye might be, just a touch, by sort of drawing in another line where you might have a bit of lash, but you don't join everything up. Now, what we're going to do now is actually straight away mark up the eye on the other side then. So if we imagine that this is on a face that's at a slight angle, maybe a really young character with really large eyes, I'm going to take this circular shape, I'm going to keep the height the same, so that's still going to be the bottom and the top, but I'm going to squeeze it. The eye that's further away is going to be squeezed down, so if I start from about here, and this circle is going to be much more of an ellipse, much more like that. Can you see how it's still the same height, but it's thinner? And that just kind of shows that it's on the far side of the head. Now, the way we're going to map this is very, very similar to start off with. So, for example, I'm going to have a nice, great big pupil, slightly brought into the inside edge. It's going to be one of those cute, slightly boss-eyed looks. In like that. Up like that. And you notice the pupil as well is much thinner along with the rest of the eye. And then the lash and brow is still going to start from the inside edge, but it's going to do something a bit different. Instead of following it straight up, you can imagine the whole thing is pushed out and forward, because the eyelashes themselves pop forward on a character. So I'm actually going to come right out over here, still follow this line round here. Just going to make sure everything's nice and in focus. It is, lovely. And bring it forward here. So where this lash line comes up on that side, that's where it's shooting out and forward. Everything's pushed, and this line cuts back in nice and thin. Then again, we've got the bottom of the lashes here. And what that allows us to do is really just kind of crack on and start to get an idea that this character, if you imagine a hood of the eye, which we're often going to have to include as well. So we'll bring a hood in, which again is another line that shows part of where there might be an epiphanic fold or anything like that. I'm just going to bring it up slightly and then across slightly. And then on this side of the character, it's going to be up slightly and across over there. Just like so. Excellent. So if you imagine that this area is going to be all nice and dark, and I'm just going to quickly shadow this in, and I'll drop into a bit of time lapse when we actually make it nice and black with this pencil, and all nice and dark around here, we can kind of dive in and worry about the eyes themselves. So this character I'm probably just going to give super high eyebrows, maybe somewhere right up there, probably not even going to fit on the page of this character, up there and up there somewhere. But with the eye itself, the pupil, there's a couple main things you should do. One, get yourself a nice big light shadow and also work out where the middle is. So I'm going to have nice big pupils right in the middle, quite dilated for this character, not super dilated but quite nice and large. And then on the other side, the pupil itself is going to be slightly to the left. On a far eye, we pull it back because the pupil's not on the surface of the eye, it's back underneath a curved clear surface that makes up the actual eye itself. So flat on or straight with this one, but pulled slightly to the left, not perfectly center. And that helps give the eye a bit of depth and realism. But before we start colouring things in, that light reflection. So I like to get a nice big circle somewhere high, somewhere slightly off to the side, to indicate that it's reflecting a huge amount of light. And that's because we need to show that the eye is a really shiny, wet surface, so to speak, that reflects loads of clear light specks. And doing one is rarely enough. So when I do one up here, I like to go right across the middle and usually do another smaller dot on the other side that slightly covers the pupil as well. So I'm going to get one down there and one down there. And really you can draw as many as you like. But if we just do one on each side for the moment here, and then we get to focus on a couple of other bits. Now the outside edge of the eye, I like to make that a little bit thicker and heavier as a line. So I'm just going to come round making this nice and thick. And then the same on this side here. Give it a good bit of thickness up and around. And then what it's good to do is the top of the eye is going to be much darker than the bottom of the eye when it comes to the colour and the shading. So you can almost imagine an area across, like an angled line, right across here and right across here. And this whole zone is going to be much darker than the rest. So this will be the part of the eye that's still a colour or still a shade, but very dark, very heavy in shadow, there and there. And then the rest of the eye is going to get lighter as you make your way down towards the middle. So start off dark at the top and get lighter as you come down. The pupil itself two options. You can either make it perfectly black or very dark from the bottom and lighter as that goes up to show a different inflection of the light. But I tend to keep them either black or the eye themed colour but an incredibly dark version of it if black's too much of a push. So what we'll do really quickly is I'm just going to drop into a time lapse on this and we'll just really kind of heavy that down and then we'll drop onto another example. Okay, so nice and simple there. Hopefully it just gives you an idea of a basic thing we want to talk about, which is when you've got your eye shape in, which can be built up with a nice top heavy lash, although the variations in design are almost limitless, a tiny bit of lash at the bottom, rarely ever much there at all, and then the other eye, the eye that's slightly further away on the head or when the head's facing slightly off kilter, this one is going to still have the same heights, the same proportions, unless there's weird foreshortening of your character, but it's going to be thinner and more squeezed in. And when you've got characters looking off to the side, it's a great opportunity to make them really cute and a tiny bit boss-eyed as well, although we haven't really done that so much here. Now, I've just moved this piece of paper down to the centre, just so that you can see this clearly, because I'm aware that when we slide it back up, there we go, and get everything up, there's a little bit of glare off of the page, but what we're going to do now, but we've got this rough idea in play, is actually talk a bit more about the basic building blocks and how we might build up an eye. So I'm going to crack on with another example, but just talk a little bit more about how I understand the shape of the eye and the placement. So again, we're not going to go for anything too crazy special. This could be your, I don't know, standard tsundere character eye maybe, or a dandere. I can't really tell the difference. I don't know all that sort of stuff. But again, we're going to try to keep a bit of an angle. So if I go for an eye that's going to just maybe start around here, a fairly shallow hood, and you'll notice that I start with the hood again, so I'm just going to go for a nice shallow curve like that. And if you imagine that the eyes obviously form this basic shape in the most basic standard world we might live in, but with anime characters, the outside edge goes up and the inside edge tends to drop down. So you end up with more of an almond-shaped eye that can often be like that. So that tends to be a bit of a basic building block. Let's just rub this out. If I was really clever and really prepared with these tutorials, I would have drawn that separately. But you get the idea for what I'm getting at there. Ugh, disgusting. This is why we have a rubber, ladies. So let's just go in and bring this edge down just a little bit as we've got the hood of the eye in. And we'll leave this edge at the top, so that the next line is the line that actually hooks up and in. And I'm going to drop down and around nice and gently. This is quite a large standard circle arc and it meets around about there. So as for the other eye, if we have it spaced accordingly fairly far away, in this instance it's going to go up still and around. And then we can help just make everything shallower with this other edge. So we're going to cut back in fairly harshly this time with this outside curve. And then again, just bring it up and in like so. You see how that's just really shortened its way out a bit. Just going to check again that this is all in focus. Lovely. And so let's crack on with this side here. So when I've got this kind of hood and the shape in a rough idea, I might go in straight away and place the pupil to get a feel for where the actual character's looking. So this one will be towards us, and again, not quite as large, but we'll do a fairly large eye facing towards camera. Maybe the majority of the top of this pupil is covered, and you'll notice, again, I'm not drawing a perfect circle. It's more of an ellipse, which is very common in anime, but obviously doesn't exist in real people. So we'll go up and around like so. And then the eye on the other side, we're going to pull it right in and across because it's facing towards us on a sphere. You've got to remember, although the nearby eye can always look flat, the far side, you're dealing with a curved surface. So if this eye is facing towards us, and if you imagine the eyeball might be more like this, then on this eye, the eyeball's like this, which means to center this, you're going to pull the pupil all the way in. I hope this makes a little bit of sense. But basically, the far away eye, just pull that pupil right across, have it come in, out and around like so. Gives us a bit of a rough idea. All these lines that we draw in as guidelines kind of make it look like the character's really old or really wrinkly, which isn't a problem. Everyone ages. But it doesn't help with the aesthetic of what we're trying to do here. So I'm going to just rub these away right now. You can tell this is a very unprepared tutorial, but we're going to get some good pointers across. Join me as ever. And now that I've got this idea of a hood, that's usually the first 3 things I'm going to do when I'm drawing eyes on a character, and it helps me understand the expression. The top hood, maybe the bottom to get a feel for how wide and open the eye is, how the placement's going to be, and then roughly where the pupils fall in. The next thing I can do then is start to worry about the lashes again. So in this instance, I'm going to imagine another bar of space that follows this line around about up here, like so, and another bar that does the same on this side, slightly further to the right, slightly further to the outside edge. And that's going to be a bit of a guideline for all sorts of lashes spiking and pointing out. So what we're going to do for this one is I'm going to pull down on this outside edge, and again, it's not going to follow all the way around perfectly, but I'm going to create a point around about here that drops down. So if you imagine this triangle is going to be a bit of a firmer final line. And then the other bits of lashes, they shoot up and out and away and so on. So what we might have is, if we bring this line up, a bit of lash that comes off here, like so. Imagine these as triangles. And then if we follow this line up and around, this thick eyelash line, we can bring maybe a lash just off of here. Not too much at the moment, not too showy. And then bring this line to continue all the way around, all the way down this side. And then maybe just a couple lashes on the inside as well. So just one, spiking off like so. Lovely. And it helps to use quick movements to get good spikes. And then another spiking off like so as well. And then the rest of this lash line, now that it's down on the inside edge, is going to be able just to drop off into maybe one kind of spike there, and then a natural curve and point down. So I'm just going to turn this paper around ever so slightly just to get a good line. You'll see that I'm just going to follow that back, up, and around, right to that point there. And I'll just make that a little bit darker as well. And then when it comes to the lashes on the bottom edge, again, not joined up. So we've got space here after we've got our guiding line sorted. And I'm probably going to have the lashes more to the outside edge than they are in the middle and the bottom. But I'm going to follow this guiding point line. Snap off a pencil edge just to make it sharp again. And bring this line around about here. So this is no way as thick, it's very slight. I'm going to give it some depth. And then just pop off some very small minor lashes, just 3 around about there. So the next thing I do from there, once I've got those lashes and space in, is that hood of the eye. With the anime characters, there's always this hood line where you see how it tucks back. It's not quite right really if you don't include that. You don't have to make it a very strong line, you don't have to make it a very large or even a long line, but it's a very good indicator for the shape of the face. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm just going to have a quick line just about there. And maybe just another one that cuts in and down ever so slightly, just to indicate where things are. It's always a good thing to get a feel for that. And if you're copying the eyes of characters that you like in your animes and so on, keep an eye out on where these kind of hood lines, where they show the eyelid and the shape of the eye going back. Some characters have very long lines, some have very short, very thin, depending on how old they are and what's going on. But it's a very important thing to take care of and often missed out. So on this side then, how are we going to show this lash in this shape in a slightly different manner? Well, firstly, because everything's condensed and everything's tucked in and facing away, where this comes down nice and flat, a nice heavy bar, on the far side, this is still going to cut in as much more of a point. So this line's going to cut up and away, up and out like this. Sure, we know where this line's going anyway, we've already got it marked down. But on the outside edge, it's just going to drop straight down and pop straight out fairly confidently as well. Everything's pushing off and forward. Remember, eyelashes aren't flat, they're pushing out away from the face. So when you see it at an angle, we're going to see how everything wants to come away from the eye at the top. Which means these eyelashes here are going to shoot further forward and out. In this example, on this side, like so. Oh, running out of paper there. And then coming down on this side, we might just have that last shot of eyelash that goes out like there. On the inside edge, we can probably still get one in so we can see where things are going. But it'll be very, very minor. In fact, much smaller than that. And then the bottom edge of eyelashes, again, I'm working from the center, middle, up towards the outside edge. So this whole shape again is a tiny bit of mass on the outside edge. And the lashes here, going with the flow away and out like so. And when I get the hood in for this part of the eye, I'm just going to tuck that right up there. Very minor. Still not much of a problem, but just an indicator. So once again, going back to the eyes, we kind of know the situation here. I've just covered it in the other one, but we'll have a few more dots of light in this example. Why not? So this time round, I'm actually going to give this character smaller pupils, and I'm going to colour them and use them in a different manner. So if I put a small pupil in here, and then much further off to the left, remember, left of centre, because it's going back inside the eye, I'll get this pupil around about here, should do it. I'm doing it much heavier than this one, just to really hammer home the example. Just making sure, lovely, still in shot. My main paranoia in life is that the camera phone's falling or it goes completely off angle. And then again, I'm going to give this a nice bit of thick border, just to really help the eye pop out and really stand out on your characters as well. Give it a nice thick dark edge, especially when you've got a very light eye with some light colours in there. And then similar here. And then for the light dots, we're going to go side to side as opposed to top angle to bottom angle. So one very nice big bright light shape around about here, and it's going to cut right in a little bit to the pupil, and then again on this side as well. And then on the outside edge, I'm going to have a circle that just intrudes on the outside edge of the eye like that. And then I'm going to have two main things. Another kind of pointy shape around about here. You can do whatever shapes you want. Doing squares for windows, for light sources coming into a window and reflecting off the surface of the eye is a very common one as well. And then after that light source, I'm going to just create a curve round about here as well. And it's not quite going to be a light area, but it's going to be a very unshaded area of the eye, just to show where light's coming into play. And with this pupil, I'm drawing another small circle at the top edge on the inside. So there's going to be lots happening there. And then one last thing to really hit home all sorts of different layers and bits is I'm going to draw a second line coming in and around right round here. Now, as you know, the sclera of the eye, the bit that has the colour, is almost hatched. It zigzags straight in, out to edge, out to middle, straight out to edge and out to middle, all the way around. And in anime, although they don't really often show it that way, unless you're watching some very beautiful artistic anime, they often indicate that pattern or run with a bit of a line of darkness that comes round. So we'll cover into that as well. I'm going to once again just drop into a quick bit of time lapse, and I'm going to show you what I'm making dark and what I'm making light. The main bits will be the pupil will be black for this zone, but I'll let it get lighter at the top, black here, lighter here, and the white areas, all these reflections are still going to be perfectly white, and a bit of shading that's darker from the top and lighter to the bottom. So we'll get that example out of the way, and then we'll talk about something else important. Okay, so far so good. So we've got our awful example for the basics, and then a kind of an idea now that you can play around a lot more with the pupil of the eye. Now in this example, we've got obviously the light areas where light source is reflected straight off of the surface, which is great. You can chuck in lots of these if you want to put a load of emotion into your character and keep them really interesting. A dark shadow bar that actually shows where the eyelashes themselves are casting a shadow onto the top of the pupil, the sclera, the area that might be in colour. And also another light zone, not a sheer reflection, but a completely separate area that has much lighter tones yet again, even with a super thick black band around the edge of the eye, as well as further lines concentrically circled on the inside to also add more depth, more development, and more character. You can keep going on and on and on and really put all sorts of interesting stuff into your character's eyes. So if you're still drawing your character with a top line, a bottom line, and a black bar in the middle basically to represent the center, do a bit more of a close-up shot on your character design. Start to really envelop some character into things and get a feel for the shape of these eyes. That's really something. So let's talk about another difficult example that you guys mentioned, and that is the eyelashes themselves at these far angles, maybe from a slightly higher view, and how the hood of the eye tucks in as well. So we'll start off, I have to go quite low I think and up and away. So we'll start off around about down here, and we'll imagine a character maybe with an eye over here. Again, I'm just drawing the top of the hood. They're facing off to the left in this example. And then maybe just it comes down and away like so. I'll have the bottom edge around about here. Again, just roughing out the lines, roughing out a rough idea of the shape of the eye and where it's going to exist for me. In this example, they'll be looking not quite towards us, but maybe back in our general direction. I think we're above the center line here, so they'll be looking slightly below. And then for this far eye, if we imagine things are going to be quite far behind and probably tucked behind the nose a little bit as well. So in this example, if we go much thinner than we are on this character, if I imagine the nose lines around about here, this far eye, if I follow this line and keep everything parallel, it's going to still come right up here, and it's still going to be all the way down here, but so much thinner. It's really going to be little more than a curve that comes off. And because we're still dealing with a curved surface, we need to remember it's still a curved shape. So in this example, I'll get the pupil to fill again most of the space, mostly facing towards us and coming in like so. And then when we kind of think about the lashes here, I'm again going to have just a little bit for the downward outside edge up there. I'm just going to make sure again it's nice and focused in. And then as this line comes up and around, because we've got a slightly higher angle, some of these lashes are going to start to overlap. So we're going to start getting some really thick, lush lash perhaps. It's going to come off maybe around about here already. So I'm just going to bring one down and in, and then start to bring off more and heavier lashes as we go. Really quite a thick area. This band again is very thick, mostly on that side before it thins right out as it gets to the edge of the eye, like so. And then we're going to have some maybe big lash lines that come up on the right hand edge, very stylized this one, and some further thick lash lines that shoot out. Now it looks like they're all bunched maybe over to the left, but we're seeing lots of lashes right along the eye, all coming out and across. So we've got our lash here, got one's here, and a really thick one that just shoots out there. So coming back in at this angle, we're going to be really sort of seeing things quite down from the fold of the eye. So in this example, I would expect a very long fold line that starts off around about here and really follows quite close to the eye. It's never too high, and it comes all the way back to about here. It's a very thin line, but a very definite line as well. And then just where it tucks in, shoot down, because this will indicate the main hood area. I'm just going to turn the page so I can get a nice cleaner line on that to work with the shape of my hand. Bring that back. So on this really foreshortened side as well, when we bring this kind of lash area in, no overlap on this edge, and then very quickly and heavily down on the outside. So we get one maybe cheeky lash shape just bringing itself down and in, but then the rest of this again is all about that outside ledge. This is where it's picking up and then immediately tucking down, up and down like that. So we get to pop in maybe some smaller lashes on this side, all a lot more foreshortened because they're heading out and away from us, but still there, nice and thick if they need to be, like so, just dropping down here. So then once we get this pupil line just in on this edge a bit deeper, we're only going to mark around about here, just on the inside edge. If I bring this curve in a little bit more than it is there, just on this inside edge, we'll pop a bit more lash. So just a really tiny moment, a tiny bar and setting of just a few bits poking out there. And that's really all I want. On this side as well, the hood of the eye still coming back a bit from up here, but still following a very similar shape. It's going to curve up, but then tuck very, very close and stop. And if you imagine the line of the nose of this character, if I follow this nose to around about here, something like that, probably going to go in a little bit like this and up and around until it meets an eyebrow somewhere. Lovely. Wasn't planning on doing any noses, but seems a good opportunity to get that one in. So again with this character, just because I want to focus on the lashes there and what's going on, I'm just going to drop in a very basic bit of eye. So we'll have a fairly large pupil here and a fairly large pupil here. In this example, I'm going to keep most of this pupil dark, but I'm going to have a super black area right in the middle, even though all of that's actually the pupil. Super black there, very, very almost black around the edge. And then for the rest of the eye, I'm probably not going to go too thick on the outside border, just for this example, just to show you there's so many versions and variations you can do. And I'll have a nice big couple of light splotches about here and about here. It's nice to draw in a couple circles of light splotches together sometimes. Really helps you with that effect. And again, I'm going to keep it nice and light in colour in this kind of barred shape around the bottom and darker to the top. So once again, I'm just going to drop into making this nice and dark as well, so it all makes sense. And then I think we'll fit in one more example to talk about one more variation. And so there you can see things from a slightly higher angle, looking down towards the eyes, still with a foreshortening, and kind of get a feel for how things are still playing with these difficult shapes. So, by contrast, we should probably do something very similar to this, but maybe looking ever so slightly below the line of the eyes, just so that they're kind of looking a bit down towards us. Now, there's all these different types of characters you keep hearing about, or I do at least. Tsunderes, danderes, kuderes, and yanderes. I think the eye we're going to go for is a bit more of a yandere character, but before they go full-on psycho. Because a really odd thing, actually, worth mentioning right now, is that part of what gives a character life and shows that they're alive is the reflections in the eyes, these spots of lights I keep talking about. That's because it shows that the eye is moist and you're a living being, really, as well as getting loads of effects that can show that there's light coming in. If you want to draw a character that's completely psycho, like a yandere character going into full stab mode, then you might actually reduce the spots of lights down to almost nothing, or remove them altogether. Yandere characters' eyes, they tend to be much, much darker. And also, if you're going to draw a character that's dead or a zombie, you probably wouldn't draw any reflections of light in the eye, to show that the eyes are dry and dead, even if they're still open. So just something to bear in mind if you're drawing some sort of horror manga or something like that. Now, this example of our yandere character, or these kind of slittier, sharper-eyed characters at least, ours is still going to have some lights and reflection, because again, they're not full-on mental yet. So, when maybe coming down from a slightly lower angle to look up, again, we're going to do the basics. I'm going to start with the nearby eye, and I always prefer to start with the near eye. I find that helps me massively when I'm working out where things are. The far eye always comes afterwards. So maybe we're going to have the top of the hood up there, like so. And then this eye, because it's thinner, it's probably, I'll make that a bit more over here, probably going to cut somewhere like this before it curves up and cuts straight in. And I'm using slightly sharper lines, even though it's still a female eye. And that's one of the differences as well. When you draw your male characters, male eyes, you can indicate a lot of these with sharp lines. But with the female eyes, we're still going to try to stick to curves whenever we can. So here's the top hood, there's the bottom. Again, just make sure autofocus is doing its job. And then on this side, we'll have maybe an eye that looks down at us towards here. So I'm going to show a bit of bottom curve coming in here. Still hide the top of the eye up there. A bit of bottom curve in like so. And then on the far eye, in this example, maybe it's going to be around about here, slightly foreshortened again. So I'll go up, maybe with this part of the hood, but then it's kind of curving off away around the edge of the eye, around the curve of the surface of the eye. So the other edge is going to drop straight back down and in, straight in towards us here, and then flatten out for the main section there. And the eye in this example again, thinner, and also coming straight in towards us, like so. Excellent, much more like that. So with this example again, I'm starting on the left now, simply so that I don't smudge too much of the paper as my hand works back across. I'm just going to mark this hood line in like so. I'm going to bring this as a curve on the inside edge here. Shoot it down to about there. And then I'm just going to again create this curve that comes off a bit more into a point now. And still goes nice and thick and high before pointing down. So it doesn't go down the inside of the edge in this example. It starts off high on the outside, then goes into a point still just by the top. We're going to throw lots of lashes off of there in a moment. We'll do the same on this side. Let's have our curve coming along like so. And then this point's going to come up and out and away, nice and thick, nice and confident. And then curve back down and in like so to here, round about there. Then with the underside, no lashes for this example. We'll just have it in as a fairly thick mark line about there, and also about there, mostly just where the pupils coming into contact with the bottom of the eye. And then when we get the hood in this example, it's still going to be much further up. We'll get our lashes out the way first. So forward lashes on a character where we're looking a bit more up and in are still going to shoot off this way to start off with, like there, there, and there. And then on this side of things, really just going to shoot out as well. So a nice one off to the right, and then a further thick one just about there before coming back in. So like that, and then on this side, everything going in a slightly different direction. So one lash coming in gives us one kind of point there, one sort of step to the level of this eye, and then the rest of everything up and out. So maybe up here, off out there, and then we know that we've got a very confident one just disappearing off there somewhere, like so. Excellent stuff. Maybe just one more for kicks, just to balance it really. Thin one coming off around there. Excellent. So these hoods are going to be a little bit higher, not right up against the eye in this example. I'm going to draw one just around about here, a quick line to mark it in, and a quick second line to mark where it comes down. And then on this side again, quick line just up over here, and then again, really briefly, another one just to bring it back in. At this line, I might just try that again. Lovely, not perfect. Bring it in a little bit more shallow. Almost exactly the same, but I can tell the difference, and that's what matters. Excellent stuff. Let's get that in, get that clean. And then back to the pupils. So we've talked about pupils. We're not going to worry about it too much again in this example. And with this character again being a bit more of a yandere, the spots of lights are really dropping out. We're going to have a tiny bit here and maybe a circle here. So very similar little oval oblong shape here, a little circle here, and then the character's pupils in this instance, they go super big psychopathic. So these are going to be some real big old pupils that we're going to have here. Really large, almost all the way to the edge. And then on this character on this side as well, we're going to go big, not quite touching the bottom. It's a real big player. Okay, and then we get to bring these lines in a little bit darker as well. So again, with this lower angle, all I wanted to show is that the shapes of the eyes are still following the same rules, but really it's just a bit more about what direction the eyelashes are going in and how do you squeeze off that far eye? How do you really just flatten it in? So one last quick time lapse where I'm going to drop this in and just show you how this eye is going to have much more of a scratchy feel to it, much less reflectiveness, and just be darker and in shadow, including the whites of the eyes as well in shadow, to show that like a kind of a madness, a darkness has taken hold of this character. And then we'll wrap up at the end. Okay, so that is basically it for this lesson. We've got 4 very different, very distinct kind of types of eyes, or at least a very simplified child's eye version. Probably going to have more context if you stick some eyebrows on there. How to deal with eyes at an angle when you're kind of looking down, but they're also kind of squeezed and foreshortened off the far side of the head, and how the lashes work. How to do similar when you're looking at the inside edge, but from a slightly lower point of view. And generally, various things you can do with the pupils of the eyes to give them loads of bump and expression and life to the character, as well as how you can completely kill off the emotional human part of the character by completely deadening the eyes, getting really rough and scratchy, loads of stress lines and various marks and sort of signs for the character is slightly kind of homicidal, basically, and probably about to take a human life. So I hope that gives you a bit of a feel for eyes. Again, like we said in the beginning, there are hundreds and hundreds of eye tutorials. Watch loads of them. Don't just stick with this one, because they'll help you with all sorts of different shapes and examples. What I really wanted to do was just kind of highlight a few of the rules that might happen with lashes on female eyes, and really just help you deal with the far away eye when it comes to drawing it on a character's head, because that seems to be where everybody has a few challenges. So I hope you guys found this tutorial to be useful. It is a pleasure as ever making it based on your suggestions. So do get in the comments below. Click like and click subscribe if you haven't already. We do lots of tutorials and all that sort of thing. And don't forget to check out Patreon and all the other bits we've got going on. Alright guys, I hope you have a lovely weekend. Keep up the practice and I'll see you guys for another tutorial next week. Goodbye.